Hello and welcome everyone again to our Wednesday news hour, where we hear from social entrepreneurs and their teams from around the world on timely topics and solutions. Gbenga just said that the Twitter ban is the conversation of the moment. So glad that you're joining us today. My name is Julia Kloiber. I'm working with the Ashoka Next Now team on the topic of tech and humanity. We're thrilled to have many of you joining from the Ashoka global community today. And for the next 30 minutes, we'll hear from Gbenga Sesan about the Twitter ban in Nigeria and what this means for democracy. Before we get started, a few housekeeping points for you. We love hearing from you, your questions that you have. Feel free to drop us your questions in the Q&A at the bottom of your Zoom screen, and we'll get to as many as we can in the second half of the conversation. So there's going to be a 20-minute conversation between Gbenga and I, and then we'll open up for questions from the audience, so from you all. And for those who wish to use captioning, there's also a captioning option here on Zoom. There's 3 dots on the bottom of the Zoom menu that say more. If you click the bottom, you can select show subtitles. So now, after the housekeeping, I'd like to introduce our guest today. Gbenga Sesan is the Executive Director of Paradigm Initiative, a Pan-African social enterprise working on digital inclusion and digital rights throughout its offices in Cameroon, Kenya, Nigeria, Senegal, Zambia, Zimbabwe. Gbenga just said that he's currently in Accra, in Ghana. He's also a non-resident fellow at the Digital Civil Society Lab at Stanford University, and he and his organization have led important digital rights work. In 2013, just to give you an example, they sued the Nigerian government when it refused to respond to a freedom of information request regarding an unlawful internet surveillance contract. Thank you, Gbenga, for joining us today.
Thank you, Julia, for having me.
Cool. Let me give you a little bit of context for all those of you who haven't read all the articles about the Twitter ban. So in early June, the government ordered telecommunications networks to block the use of Twitter after the social media company deleted a controversial tweet by the President Buhari for violating its terms of use. Another number that might be interesting, like how widely is Twitter used in Nigeria? There's an estimated amount of 40 million Twitter users in Nigeria, a total population of 200 million people. So that's quite a big chunk, even though we know numbers and statistics, people might have several accounts and so on, but still like a big user base in Nigeria, so a very important topic. Let's dive right into the questions. Gbenga, social media platforms are moderating and removing content all the time. Like we've seen that with, for example, President Trump being even banned from Twitter. So this is something like that happens all the time, but what we don't see that often is countries banning social media service. And it's almost been a month since the Nigerian government did so. Can you give us some more background on what has led up to the situation that has led up to the government banning Twitter? Was the deleted tweet of the president just the straw that broke the camel's back, so to say?
Well, I think it definitely was the straw. Thanks, Julia, for that context. It was the straw, but the weight that really broke the camel's back started, getting heavier in October last year. And as I've said before, through many channels, this Twitter ban in Nigeria is not just about Twitter. It's the continuation of the closure of the civic space in the country, as we're seeing, of course, across many other countries. But for this particular, suspension of Twitter on June 4, which is going to have its anniversary in just 4 days. We had a scenario where a government came to power, using the power of social media. Social media was used very much in the campaign of the current political party. And so they know the power of social media. They know social media can help you to change governments, right? To present new opposition as the new political party. They understand that. But in addition to that is also that since 1990, I mean, since 2015, and of course, times before that, this government has had proposals to regulate social media, basically not to create standards, but to control what is said, so that they can protect, their own, more like regime protection and not for national security, even though national security is always the excuse that is used. And then that process continued. Citizens pushed back. There was a bill called the Frivolous Petitions Bill. Citizens pushed back. There was the hate speech bill, two versions of the hate speech bill. Citizens have pushed back. Those haven't moved much. There was the Protection from Internet Falsehood or Social Media Bill. Citizens pushed back. And so when in October last year, Twitter was a major platform used for the coordination of the protests that citizens, especially young Nigerians, were part of, to basically push back and say, stop killing us. Police brutality is a problem. Not only was Twitter used as a platform for coordination, Twitter was also a platform for fundraising. And because the founder of Twitter, and this is the personal grasp of the government against Jack Dorsey, because he retweeted about the need to use Bitcoin, because during the protest, government did freeze the accounts of citizens that were involved with fundraising for the October 2020 NSAS protests. And so Bitcoin was an alternative. And so that didn't sit well with the government. And between October 2020 and now, the Minister of Information and Culture, Mr. Lai Mohammed, had waxed lyrical about the need to clamp down on social media, including invoking China and things like that. So when the president's tweet was deleted, don't forget, by the way, the president's tweet was deleted by Facebook. Also, his post was deleted by Facebook also. But there's some power play that happened there that made the president's people feel insulted. And so this was very personal. And this was also a time to basically pay back this platform that citizens had used a lot to express dissent, even though the excuse of the government is that, the separatist movement and some other criminals are using Twitter to destabilize Nigeria. It is absolute, okay, forgive my French, nonsense.
So you say it was a power play to some extent between the government and US-based company, right? And the part that was forgotten, and you wrote a recent article with the title "The Third Party and the Third Sector." Citizens were kind of left out of the equation and out of the discussions. Do you want to maybe give us a brief, give us some insights into what you mean with the third party and the third sector?
Okay, thanks, Julia. I had to write that article, by the way, because all of the conversation seems to say Twitter versus Nigeria, cloud nation versus nation state, or company versus country. But the government will have you believe that their battle is against Twitter as a company, but unfortunately, Twitter is the avenue here, is the excuse here. The real target is citizen voices. The real target is opposition. And unfortunately, Nigeria doesn't have a reliable opposition structure because most politicians just use political parties as a vehicle for their next election, which is why they, cross carpet all the time. The president at least contested on three, ANPP, CPC, and then APC, on three different platforms before he won. Many members of the opposition are now coming to the president's party ahead of the elections in 2023 so that they can win also. So the real opposition are citizens. And so when you begin to have, that kind of scenario where government says, I'm shutting down Twitter because Twitter as a company is not registered in Nigeria. Of course, Twitter was never registered in Nigeria. Twitter is not registered in many countries, and that does not stop those countries from having legal conversations with Twitter about what to keep on or what to legally take down. But Nigeria, the Nigerian government, especially the Minister of Information, and of course, acting under the support of the president, are sort of behaving like, spoiled babies that do not want to obey the rules because they feel that they are special. They try to invoke India all the time, but India is going through an albeit flawed, but a legal process. They try to say that the UK shut down shut down BlackBerry services and the internet in 2011 because of protests. But don't forget, what they forget to say is that there was a debate in Parliament. So every country where this conversation is happening, from France to Germany, Germany just announced that government agencies are supposed to shut down, I think, their Facebook accounts by the end of the year or something like that, because of some data protection. So all of these conversations about laws, about parliament, about judicial oversight, but in Nigeria, it's very different. It's that a memo was sent to telecom companies and ISPs to remove access to Twitter. There is no basis for that, even in Nigerian law. There is no basis for that in international human rights law. There is no basis for that for the contract that these companies have with their customers. So this is why I think it's important to center citizens in this conversation. It is not, they're like the third party in the conversation, but the most important party. So when citizens, for example, went to court, my organization has gone to court. I'm waiting to finish a process of a class action lawsuit so that I can sue my own telecom company and my own ISP as a person, as Gbenga, not as ED of pain, because I feel that unfortunately, when you have scenarios like this and it is painted as the picture of Twitter versus Nigeria, you miss the point that citizens are not saying I want to tweet because they love Twitter. They love Twitter because it provides a platform for them to speak. It could have been any platform. It could even be cool. The one, that KOO that the government has now, departed to, almost like a desert where they are alone with no one listening to them. It could be any platform, but basically it is the need for citizens to express their rights. And thankfully, the third sector, which is the non-profit sector in Nigeria, has been supporting citizens in this. Paradigm Initiative and others are registered to protect citizen interest. And that's why I thought it was important to write about the third party, which is citizens, and the third sector, which is NGOs that are supporting citizens to go to court, to literally say we will not obey government in this case, because there are times when obeying tyranny is actually you acting against democracy. And we've put our feet down to say, Gbenga will keep tweeting. In fact, my tweets have gone up about 300% since June 4. I think, for God's sake, I work. I'm a full-time employee of Paradigm Initiative, so I have work to do. But now I've tweeted a lot more. My impressions have gone up. Everything has gone up because you don't tell me what not to do. I have a right to speak using any platform of my choice. If I commit a crime online, oh, fine, sue me and let the law follow its course. But as long as I'm a citizen that has a right in a democracy, if I was in a kingdom or a non-democratic country, maybe I wouldn't say what I'm saying, but I live in the Federal Republic of a democratic Nigeria, and I will assert my rights.
Have others stopped using Twitter, like from the civil society sector or activists, or like who is not like using Twitter anymore due to the ban?
The government. And this is funny because the government, I'll give two examples. The Independent National Electoral Commission. Oh, by the way, apart from the government, there are businesses that are, sincerely worried and are not tweeting. And there are also media houses that have been specifically targeted because the NBC, the National Broadcasting Commission, did say stop tweeting. Many of them cowered out of fear because they don't want to lose their licenses. Many of them said, well, we don't want to disobey the laws, we'll use other platforms. But some of them have actually said, we will keep tweeting. Shout out to Premium Times in Nigeria, who have said, we will keep tweeting, we will use Twitter, and have also gone to court to challenge that. We need a lot more activist companies and media platforms. But the people who are missing out are the government. And we don't miss them, by the way, because there were so many lies and so much propaganda from government and so much attack from government, apologists that they have now gone to coup. They should go and cool down on coup. We don't miss them, but we do miss information from the Nigerian government that is useful for many citizens. I've had to personally share some information from the Center for Diseases Control, because that's good information about the coronavirus and how we need to flatten the curve. The last day they tweeted was on June 4 or June 5. And that's a shame, because right now it means that when you go to Twitter, officially, Nigeria has not released data since June 6th, which is not true, because Nigeria has released data on Facebook and other platforms, but out of pettiness and protection of a childish leader's ego, we do not have the CDC releasing information about the coronavirus, even though they're doing great work. And also, just 2 days ago, the oh my God, Independent National Electoral Commission, which is supposed to be independent, also stopped tweeting, and they started online registration just 2 days ago. Some of us have shared this information because we think citizens should vote. There are more than 20 million Nigerians who have since turned 18 to 21 and can now register to vote over the last 4 years. And those 20 million people, some of them have been asking me and others questions on Twitter. Oh, I tried to use the platform, this didn't happen. And I keep copying, INEC Nigeria on Twitter. But clearly, I hope someone in their office is secretly using VPN to check, because there's so much information they are missing for people who are giving them feedback. They share the information that after 48 hours, almost 50,000 Nigerians had actually, gone to the platform to register to vote, and some of us have helped them to share that information on Twitter. And it's just a shame that independent institutions that protect health and that protect democracy, like INEC, Independent National Electoral Commission, have also been unable to share information on a platform of their choice because of a minister who is throwing tantrums.
I also read in The Economist just like 4 days ago, like they had a big headline saying Nigeria's government wants to gag the press. A draft law echoes the old days of the dictatorship. So media organizations in Nigeria have expressed alarm as the government prepares to follow its controversial Twitter ban with wider regulations reigning in the press and social media companies. So can you give us insights on what the government is working on there?
Yes, so like I said, the Twitter ban is not just about Twitter, it's part of a clampdown agenda. Half of that agenda was announced by the minister when they announced the suspension of Twitter, but many people missed it. What they did say was, we're suspending Twitter and we will register over the top services, OTTs. OTTs, basically services that don't use middlemen, so direct gaming services, direct communications, online platform services, direct video streaming services that don't need any middleman or any broadcaster as a medium or any telecom infrastructure. Now, what they've done is the government has had a controversial bill on revising the National Broadcasting Commission's Act, the act that established the National Broadcasting Commission. And as part of that, they've now introduced the concept of OTT registration. So where it gets funny is that the ministry announced, the agency, the Broadcasting Commission announced, through national newspapers and everywhere, that all OTTs, including Twitter, Facebook, Google, and everyone, should now go ahead and ask for a license to operate in Nigeria. And they have to set up offices and register and operate in Nigeria. But what they didn't say is that law doesn't exist yet. In fact, the bill that is supposed to promote the law for OTT registration in Nigeria had its public hearing last week. And the minister was there to defend that bill, which is not yet law. So you have a scenario where a retroactive law is being used. So you're saying OTTs like Twitter must register in Nigeria according to the law, but you are still working, cooking the law. So basically you've set a table for breakfast while you're still preparing the breakfast in the kitchen. And that is the nature of the beast as we see it, in the moment. So that broadcasting code does not only affect OTTs, it also affects broadcasting organizations. The good news is that all of the broadcasting platforms, through their association, the agencies in charge of the associations have basically spoken against this, and they have reminded the president, retired Major General Muhammadu Buhari, that in 1984, as a military dictator, he introduced Decree 4, which was to gag the media. In fact, the veterans, one of them, a member of his own political party, did say that Decree 4 of 1984 is not even as terrible as what the government is now proposing to media houses, because Decree 4 focused a lot on, your sources and things like that. But this is not just about sources. This is about sources. Media houses have been told you cannot source. You can't use, Twitter as a platform for, user-generated content, your UGC. So your sources cannot be Twitter, which is weird because you don't tell a media house where you can get its source from. But apart from that, they're now saying that, there are registrations that have to happen. Online media has to be regulated. And no one is saying don't regulate if the word regulate means create standards or control, but when you want to control, that is where the problem starts.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Thank you, Gbenga, for giving us this overview. And also to the audience, if you have questions, please ask them in the chat. And I have a first question for you. What roles are citizens playing right now that makes you hopeful about the future of Nigeria's democracy?
Citizens are now the opposition, and I love it. I'm loving it. Just later today, I'm going to meet with some individuals who in West Africa are actually very much involved with citizen action, and I can't wait to have that meeting with them, because as governments become more repressive, what they don't know is that they're pushing citizens who normally used to look away, they're pushing them to become more conscious. One of the elements of pressure and control is that a force will always be met with an equal and opposite reaction. These are basic, life principles. If you clamp down on citizens, they will then realize that, wait a second, what is so special about this internet that you don't want us to use it? And they want to find out. Dictatorships always, control always elicits interest in platforms. It arouses, curiosity. So three things. Number one, citizens are a lot more curious. This Twitter, why are you banning it? What is there? Let's go and find it. And that's good because it means I'm tweeting more. I can imagine that Twitter will tell us the numbers when they have their time, to do so. But my gut feeling is that if you take out government and you look at citizens, particular, we've had a lot more engagement with citizens on Twitter discussing the Twitter ban than we normally have when there is no ban. So basically, when Uganda shut on the internet, at some point, because of election information that they did not want people to share, people started sharing that information more. You ban a particular music video because, no, don't watch it. It's a bad music video. Of course, I want to see it. Why did you ban it? Did something interesting happen and things like that? So that's one, curiosity is aroused. But the second thing is that we now have people who were literally just innocent citizens minding their business, no longer minding their business. Now they are like, don't put your hand in my pocket. Don't put, don't do that. Many years ago, about 7 years ago, I was busy tweeting about the girls that were kidnapped in Nigeria by terrorists, about 276 girls. And I was tweeting, bring back our girls, which was what everyone was tweeting at the time. I mean, I didn't start it. Someone else started it and I was tweeting it. But then the government tried to harass me using the Secret Service. They invited me, went to my office on the weekend, didn't find me there. And then when I got questioned by the Secret Service, light bulb moment for me. I was like, okay, if they are so desperate about this, let's do this. So I printed a red t-shirt and a black t-shirt, wrote bring back our girls on it. And then when government had the biggest event of the year, the World Economic Forum, I wore that t-shirt and I had a chance to receive an award on that day. So the president of Nigeria at the time, Goodluck Jonathan, who hated the hashtag, and the president of Rwanda, who himself is not known to tolerate dissidents, were right behind me while I was wearing a red t-shirt that said, bring back our girls. Safe to say that picture was never released by government as an official government photo, but that was activism that I probably wouldn't have done if they did not try repression on me. So basically, you made me dial up from one level of activism to level 7. And the more you do it, I'm at 34 right now. Maybe I'm going to get to 99 eventually with African governments doing their nonsense. But the third and the most powerful thing I see happening is that citizens are coordinating more. There's a lawsuit that is coming. I'm going to be part of it. It's a class action lawsuit. It's not very popular that, Nigerian citizens go to court to say, why did you shut down my access?
Mhm.
Or why did you do something wrong in providing services? But this would not have happened but for the Nigerian government's indecent action. So thanks to Mr. Buhari and Mr. Lai Mohammed and their collaborators, citizens are waking up. And thanks to all of their colleagues across the continent, many African citizens are now awake to their responsibilities and doing a lot more. So thanks to you, keep doing it and you will keep seeing more pressure. And the bad news for them is that internet access is increasing. And so you will have much more citizens. Africa has less than 50% of people online right now. When it does get to 70%, then dictators will know the meaning of the power of the people.
Wow, really powerful and like also a hopeful message that like citizens are getting even more active due to bans and that we can see a backlash. We don't see a backlash. There's a lot of discussion, especially in academic and civil society circles, around digital public spaces and digital public spaces maybe of the future, because the platforms that we currently inhabit are still like shaped and designed by companies, right? And I'm just really curious to maybe end the conversation with talking a little bit about like the visions you have for digital public space in Nigeria or beyond, a space that civil society organizations would be able to shape, and that would not only be focused on the commercial interest of companies, but the needs of the society.
Yes.
So what is your vision? I mean, that's a very tough question at the end,
I
but
know, but
I'm
don't
very
worry.
curious to hear your vision and thoughts on that.
I got prepared for that question when I was studying electronic and electrical engineering in the university. And so, I was studying, engineering at a time when the internet was relatively new in Nigeria. I got to school in 1995 when the internet wasn't very popular in Nigeria. And so I started learning about the OSI layers of the, foundation of the internet and networks and things like that. And what I noticed was between then and now, many of the internet platforms that we have today have taken a different route from the original plan. The original plan was protocols. That's why you have the hypertext transfer protocol. That's why you have all sorts of protocols that define how the internet works. But many of them have now created walled gardens. So there's a Facebook that wants you to believe that it is the internet. There is Twitter that wants you to believe it is the platform of choice. And because many of those companies have created walled gardens, it means that when problems happen, they have to deal with them by themselves. But the future of platforms is protocol, the way the internet was originally designed, decentralized, open source, and when there are problems, Twitter or Facebook will not be left alone to solve the problem. It will be everybody's problem because it is everybody's platform. It does not mean that a business model will become everybody's money. Of course, capitalism is not going to die tomorrow, but there will be a renewed approach to how platforms practice their business. Twitter already started something around that, where they're beginning to look at the future of their platform, bring a protocol where it can be open, where a lot more people can, participate, and where it is not a walled garden, where it is actually defined as a public infrastructure that, even though it is managed, don't forget, our parks and all those things that are public infrastructure are actually managed by certain entities. But if there is a criminal activity at a public park, it is not the business of that entity alone. It is the business of the entire community. And that is the future of platforms. Platforms, we need to guess, they will need to focus less on money. They will make money because human rights, it's good for business. And also solving our problems. Now they're in trouble. They're in trouble because of hate speech. They're in trouble because of fake news, because they can't solve it. You can't take down all posts. I mean, the Christchurch incident in Australia is something that everyone felt, oh my God, how could this happen? But things like that will keep happening as long as Facebook, Twitter, Google, and all of them have walled gardens. It's like someone said, it's like watching TV, and depending on the kind of TV you are watching, the program will either start at 4 p.m. or start at 5 p.m. That's not the way, public communication happens. So a lot of my hope in the future, and this is beginning to happen because you have a lot more investors that understand the three different areas that I'm interested in. One is engineering. The engineering is all wrong right now. The engineering is selfish. If the internet engineering was selfish, if Bob Kahn and the rest of the engineers that designed the transfer protocol and others, if they kept it to themselves to make money, there'll be no internet today. And there'll be no Facebook and there'll be no Twitter. So engineering has to be different. But apart from engineering, policy also has to be radically different. Right now, policy is just a unit in many of these companies. There's a policy unit at Twitter. There's a policy unit at Facebook. There's a policy unit in Google. No. Policy will have to be as mainstream as engineering and as campaigns, because policy is what shapes and determines what is done, how it's done, and how to seek redress when something goes wrong. So engineering has to change, policy has to be centralized, and more importantly, global companies have to become global. Silicon Valley, London, anywhere that you start a company in the global north does not make it global. What makes it global is global presence, global understanding, global expertise. If you don't understand what is happening in Myanmar as a Facebook that calls itself a global company, you will make silly mistakes, as they did. So I do not say that all companies have to then register in all countries, but they must invest in diversity. If you've got 10 white faces, 10 men determining policy for a platform, it will be a white platform. It will be a male platform, but we have to increase diversity. And this is not me being an African saying, I am more Africans. No, I'm saying hire experts, including those African experts, including those South American experts who know the topic and who can solve the problem for you, instead of sitting in California and trying to decide what happens in Abuja.
Wow, Gbenga, we've covered such a, within these 30 minutes, I think it was even only 25, we've covered such a wide field of topics, right? From the Twitter ban, then what led up to it, then the action citizens are taking, civil society is taking, the litigation efforts that are going on, and concluded with decentralized, open vision, less walled gardens for the internet of the future, the more diverse and equal internet and future, and many futures that coexist, of course. Thank you so much for the insights and for sharing your thoughts and ideas with us. We've recorded this session and we'll be sharing the recording with all of you who've been listening. Please share it with your communities, your Twitter followers. I highly recommend to follow Paradigm Initiative and Gbenga on Twitter if you want to see when the ban ends and what happens then. So if you just want to follow the conversation, the next Welcoming Change sessions are going to be on building collective power for workers in the US and the power of procurement to rebalance the health of people and the planet. We've just copied you the links into the chat. We're very much looking forward to joining, seeing you again at our next session. Thanks so much, Gbenga. We're very excited to see how this progresses and how citizens are organizing and standing up and uniting to fight for their human rights in the digital space. Thank you again, and have a nice afternoon to Accra in Ghana, and to everyone else who's been joining us today.
Thank you, Julia, and thank you, everyone, and thank you so much, Ashoka.